the report that Tom Murphy of Whole Hog Sports and the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette got and was the first to release yesterday. Tom, appreciate you joining us as always. I know you've been busy. I think a lot of speculation has been centered around Jermail Ashely and why he's been fired. A lot of people are pointing to, well, the recruiting on the defensive line in there. And I know you're reporting, but in your opinion, why do you think Sam Pittman elected to make a change at his defensive line position?
Hey, good morning, guys. It's good to be with you as always. I think a lot of factors play into any time you make a decision with a coach. And I know that Sam Pittman had said late in the season and then right at the postseason that he didn't want to make any changes. But I do think recruiting played a role, and there's always things that go on behind the scenes when you put together the puzzle of why you make a move like this. So you guys have probably heard some of the speculation as I have, but I do think that recruiting is a big deal for Sam Pittman and their coaches, like you mentioned, Dowell, Jimmy Smith, Kenny Guyton. I mean, Sam Carter. These guys are delivering in recruiting. And the one thing I would like to see is the Razorbacks settle on a defensive line coach and have one for a few years, because that position's undergone constant change since 2016.
Yeah, Tommy was actually addressing that earlier. You've got it right there in front of you, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, got me to thinking. I went and looked in the media guide and went back to 2011, and there's been 8 different coaches at that position since 11. Now, Steve Caldwell was there twice, but Caldwell coached defensive ends, and you had, at that point, a defensive end and a defensive tackles coach for 11 and 12, so 2 on that. But Partridge, Roy Segrist, John Scott Jr., Caldwell again in 18, Kenny Ingram, Derek LeBlanc, Jermail Ashely, all guys that have been on that defense line. And the most stable that there's been was Roy Segrist, who got 3 years. None of those guys got a 4th, and many didn't get 2. Tom, why is it that this particular position's been so unstable for the Arkansas coaching staff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, when your head coaching position has been unstable, then you have years of instability within your staff. So I would like to think that if he hires the next guy and he's a good recruiter and he communicates well with the kids, because you did see Solomon Wright's dad's post that something about Jermail Ashely, you know, he's not with the Pittman plan, basically. And, you know, you can read a lot into that, but I think it's a guy who communicates what the head coach wants the players to hear and just has a good rapport with the players. Yeah. You know, you can be tough, but you got to have a good rapport with the guys.
You got to let them know you love them too. At the end of the day, obviously head coaching transition has something to do with this. My theory, or my working theory this morning, at least, it could be changed. Is this has been maybe the last spot they've been willing to put money. You've only got so much money in the assistant coaches pool. They've invested it with coordinators who have not been defensive line coaches and other people in secondary coaches and other places. If you want a big name coach, you got to be willing to pay big time money. And Arkansas has just not, they've paid these guys the last few years seemingly, $200,000, $300,000. It's kind of the last spot they pay right now on the staff, and I think that leads to some of the transition. You haven't been able to hire experience and talent because you've kind of run out of money, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a solid theory, and there's always going to be, the newer guys on your staff, like a Michael Shearer, who it was his first year as a major college assistant coach, and they're going to be on the lower end of the pay scale. And it's still nice pay, but it's a solid theory, and they've also split the duties up. Like I think John Scott, one of the reasons he went to South Carolina was, they split up the duties again. So, who knows how it will play out, but I think those guys, like an Isaiah Nichols and the guys who've been here for a long time, they play for a bunch of different coaches at D-line.
Yeah. We've had several texts, people saying Ed Orgeron, defensive line. Listen, that'd be a great hire if you could get him, but you better be prepared to pay way north of $500,000 probably to get him to come in as a defensive assistant. Now, I don't even know that he would be interested in that, or if Sam Pittman would be interested. But if you want that kind of name that can do that kind of recruiting, you're not going to get by with $200,000 or $300,000.
Exactly, and he's probably in a situation where he could hang out for a few months or a year, or possibly even retire if he wanted.
Sure.
And I don't know if it'd be an exactly good mesh here. I think that's more on the unlikely scenario.
I would agree, but that's just a name that's been thrown at us several times. So.
Tom Murphy talking with us here, Whole Hog Sports, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Tom, KJ Jefferson, I think you were the first to break that story too, so kudos to you for having a busy weekend with all these different reports. I want to know just kind of if you've heard anything about his timeline. You hear minor knee surgery, arthroscopic, cleaning some stuff up. Doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. Anytime I hear knees, though, I get a little queasy as someone that's torn my ACL. Any indication when he might be back practicing with the fellas? I know spring ball's coming up, but what does that timeline look like from what you heard, or if you heard anything on that matter?
Not exactly sure, but, as knee surgeries go, you're going to clean up some scar tissue. Generally speaking, between now and spring ball, you'd think he'd be close to good and mobile. But the quarterback is an entirely different deal when it comes to spring. They're not going to be hit. You do want them to be able to make the fast reads. I mean, to me, that's what this spring will be all about, is improving KJ's skills at reading defenses, making fast reads, possibly adding in a few quirks into the offense to exploit, the way college football is going. But he won't be taking any hits, and keeping his diet right, because I think playing at 240 or 235 is a better weight than 247. So to me, those are all the keys of spring, as opposed to making sure he's out there taking a ton of reps.
And he's, I know that was the big storyline headed into last season, and we saw him come on down the stretch, and there was kind of made some jokes after that whole debacle or whatever. Tom, I want to ask you on the subject of recruiting, not necessarily to dive in what they've done, but if you're Sam Pittman and if you're Jimmy Sexton, are you using also not only what you saw this past season on the field, but what's happening in recruiting off the field as a kind of a pro on why Sam Pittman should get a certain amount of money in this upcoming contract extension and raise?
Well, everything plays into a contract negotiation, right? So, the perception that they're scoring big, they're getting not only good freshman, commits or signee commits, but also transfer guys. It all plays a role in it, and I think that thing hopefully will be done relatively soon, and who knows where the final money will wind up at. But when you're a head coach, I don't know if Sam Pittman's that worried about it. He's going to get a much bigger payday, and
sure, he's
recruiting to contend in the SEC, and he knows how tough that is, and they're doing what they do.
And you got to remember with Sam, and I mean, I haven't sat down and spoke to him about, hey, your money and how you spend it and all these things. But, he spent a lifetime coaching at hundreds of thousands a year, not millions of dollars a year. So the kind of money he's making is a big change, and everybody welcomes him. But it's not like he spent hey, I've got to get this much to keep up this lifestyle I've had. I mean, head coaches maybe, live that high on the hog, but he's not been someone. I mean, he's made a good living, don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's required millions of dollars a year to keep up what he's been used to.
That's absolutely true. And I think that's why you see around the industry, as Arkansas went and played road games, and, different coaches in the industry talking about how happy they are. Ed Orgeron was one of them. How happy they were that a career assistant gets a shot and delivers and is continuing to deliver and in recruiting and so on. It speaks well for the industry. I mean, I talked to Matt Luke last summer about Sam getting his chance. Now he's at Georgia, where he's coaching Sam's old players.
Right.
Just so happy for the industry and the position of a veteran O-line coach getting his shot. Now I think that's pretty widespread throughout college football. Yeah.
It feels like he should be somewhere in the 5-point something range, plus some incentives, for wins or bowl, obviously bowls, but some other things that might go on top of that. But that, to me, on the outside looking in, feels like that's the number I'm expecting is 5-point something a year.
Yeah, and it may be in the high fives. Tommy, what I'd like is for college football to appoint me and you to be the czars. And what we'll do is we'll handle NIL, we will handle recruiting stuff, we'll handle violations, we'll handle portal, we'll put some good checks on the portal, and we'll handle salary.
Yeah.
We'll get all of that. Everybody will be happy.
And I think what $600,000-700,000 a year you can get each. Of course, not we're not splitting. Me and Tom aren't splitting that, but about say $750 a year. They'll get a solid 30-35 hours a week out of us, right?
and we'll make college football so much happier for the fans.
And we're going to need a lot of vacation time too. Probably 4 to 6. Go ahead and make it 7 weeks a year that we need. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Tom, I want to play you this.
We can start Monday, next Monday. In fact, we can start today. In fact, you want to get down to it.
Tom, I want to play you this clip from this weekend. We had, Tommy and I were discussing earlier, this is one of the best divisional weekends that we've had in quite some time, and it helped when you had 3 game-winning field goals and a game-winning touchdown in overtime.
30 yards to win the game. Matt Gape boots it through. And the Rams, by the hair of their skinny teeth wind up winning it.
3 games so far, a walk-off field goal.
Yes.
All 3.
Yes.
Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels on NBC. So, Tom, I'll ask you.
Buckle up for the night game there, boys.
Yeah. I'll ask you this. Who had the more painful weekend? Was it the Green Bay Packers knowing that Aaron Rodgers is all but out the door? Was it the Tennessee Titans getting Derrick Henry back for the first time in months, only to lose at home to the Cincinnati Bengals? Was it the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming all the way back, only to lose on a last-second, almost Hail Mary type throw to Cooper Kupp in the game winner? Or was it the Buffalo Bills last night coming oh so close to defeating the Kansas City Chiefs?
Man, it was all so painful for the losing teams. Well, I don't think we will ever have another weekend like that. And to cap it off with 4 scores in the final 150 or whatever that was in the Bills-Chiefs game.
Yeah.
Just magnificent football watching. And I was just so happy to be able to watch that. And for Bills fans, I feel that pain. I think, my Falcons endured the worst Super Bowl loss, but the Bills, like a lifetime of playoff pain, and I feel it for them.
Yeah, I was reading there at halftime of Tom Brady's game yesterday. That was the largest halftime deficit since the Super Bowl against Atlanta, and I thought of you instantly because we know how that one ended, but it didn't quite end the same for Tom, but close.
No, I was talking to my brother because the Falcons score was 28-3, and the Rams made it 27-3, and we were talking, they're only 1 point off from that, and the series of blunders that Rams had, the fumble on the 1 yard line, Cooper Kupp's fumble, the other fumble by the running back, so painful, and I don't really mind seeing the Bucs hurt a little bit as a Falcons fan, so sorry.
All right. Hey, before we go, just some thoughts on Arkansas and A&M. Big crowd, best atmosphere of the year, and another great finish. Overtime, you had the Amude dunk with the lights went out a little early. Just here's a few takeaways real quick from Arkansas's win on their home floor against A&M.
Well, they're starting to round into shape. They're starting to figure out their rotations, and that's all good. I thought they might pull away here and there, and they just could not pull away from them. J.D. Note has got to be so much better about his decision-making defensively. I'm not sure what player, Johnson or Jackson, riding them down the sideline for his 5th foul. Not good. I thought it was going to cost them in overtime. They got lucky. I have been doing this thing lately where I've been listening to radio calls. Like, for instance, I listened to a lot of the Rams call last night on Sirius XM. I listened to the Aggies radio, and they were so incensed that the lights went out, and Buzz Williams referred to it in his post game. It's pretty wild to hear like all sides of a call. But look, hey, maybe the Razorbacks can do what they did last year. I don't see a 12-game winning streak in conference play coming, but they're certainly playing better and getting themselves on the bubble.
And with where the SEC standings are right now and so many teams, I don't think you need a 12-game winning streak to do well in this league with where it stands either.
No, I mean, the thought is if you can get to would be 500 or a game above in league play, 10-8, 2 games above, you'd have a chance to make the NCAAs. And I adhere to that theory. That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So maybe they can keep this thing rolling.
All right, 4-3 right now after 7 games. Got 1 this week in a non-con game. Tom, always fun. We'll talk to you on Thursday. Get ready for another big weekend.
Absolutely. Sounds good. See y'all.
All right, Tom Murphy with us here on a Hot Take.
BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile wagering to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get started. That's BLEAV. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.